let's poll the room briefly. How many end users / owners do we have in the room? How many integrators? How many consulting engineers? Okay, so we've got a pretty diverse group. So let's get started with our panel and let everyone introduce themselves. Let's start at the end with, Mitch.
How you doing? How you guys doing? Mitch Reed, Conti, Building Automation Controls.
Morning, everyone. Nitesh Trikha from Neeve.
Jack Scicluna from Bedrock Detroit, Director of Technology.
Russ Holton from Bedrock Detroit, Senior Director of Smart Building Strategy.
Demaj, KODE Labs.
Thank you very much for joining us, guys. I'm going to toss a softball out there, and any one of you guys can take it if you want. But as far as BAS to the cloud, why do we consider it inevitable? Because I hear a lot of people, both end users, systems integrators, saying that it's inevitable that we're going to be moving all OT to the cloud. Talk to me about that. Who wants to grab that one?
You want to take that, Eddie, since you sold me on going to the cloud?
It's probably everyone else. It's probably better you take it, Russ, because you bought into it.
All right. You want me to? I'll start off if you want. I can give you guys our journey at Bedrock, why we did it. So prior to being on the cloud, where we are now with our BAS, we had on-prem servers that were at our Rosa Parks data center. So that was a complicated, expensive way to do things, right? So we had to have a third-party company that managed our servers. We paid them rent on server space. Every time we brought new buildings online, I had to get more server space, which cost us more money contractually. We had problems with data, holding data, historical data rights. So we constantly, with all the data that we hold here at Bedrock, we had to keep extending server space. We had outages occasionally over there that took us offline, sometimes 8 to 12 hours. And when you're a big real estate portfolio like Bedrock, we can't be down that long, right? So a lot of things. Eddie and Etrit at KODE came to me in 2020. That's about when we started doing the journey. And they suggested, hey, why don't you take all of your BS operations to the cloud? At first, I was hesitant to it, right? Because I've never had any dealing with the cloud. And then Etrit simplified it for me. He says, do you have an iPhone? I'm like, sure. He's like, what are your hesitations with the cloud? I go, I don't trust it. He goes, everything on your phone goes to the cloud. You know this, right? And I was like, does it? I didn't know that, right? So at the time, I was clueless on all this, right? So he educated me on that, and I started doing research with the guys at KODE Labs. We had our own internal teams research it. The first go around at Bedrock, we did a lot of preliminary work. It was declined by our leadership. They didn't trust the cloud. It wasn't somewhere they wanted to go. So we had to pause on it, tap the brakes. Then we got new leadership in that had cloud-based experience, and they were 100% in support of it. So then we started the journey on the cloud. It wasn't something we did overnight, right? So it was about a 6 months endeavor between Jack Scicluna's team, my team, KODE Labs, designing how we're going to do this, how we're going to take our current infrastructure of 16 million square feet at the time, about 65 buildings, all of our historical data. How do we save all this? How do we move everything from our on-prem servers to the cloud? We came up with a solution, a plan. We moved it to the cloud 2022, right around there, early 22. Been on the cloud now 3 years, going on 3.5 years. We've had no outages, no issues with the cloud. We've reduced our operating cost from being on-prem to the cloud by about 45% annually. So it's been a huge reduction. Other impacts we've had is our cybersecurity is elite now. Not only do we have Jack's security in our own network, we have the Niagara security in our JACEs and things like that, but we now have the Google Cloud security set up there with KODE cybersecurity set. So we passed every pen test, no issues. That's been our journey. That's where we're at. It's been a process. The initial 6 months, challenging, but it went through seamlessly, and we've been on 3 years perfectly.
Nice. So Eddie, you guys sell a cloud solution, right? So from your perspective, is there a certain vertical market that's more susceptible to moving to the cloud now than others?
Honestly, I think what we're seeing is that all verticals are starting to, embrace it, right? To Russ's point, I mean, it took 6 months, but we're talking about moving an entire portfolio in 6 months. You guys have been doing this longer than I have. You know that you're not moving an entire portfolio in, 6 years anywhere, if you're working with on-prem clustered siloed systems. So, what we're seeing is that, from when we started back in late 2017 until now is that all verticals are embracing it. Everybody wants to go there because, I mean, honestly, it's humanly impossible to do any of the things that the rest of the world does if you're dealing with racking and stacking servers, right? It's like, do you want to be in a business of running real estate, or do you want to be in a business of running, data centers and rack and stack? And those are just two different things. So we're saying we're working in all verticals now. I mean, literally every vertical is just, it seems to be exploding, whether it's retail, whether it's office, mixed use, high-rise residential, to healthcare and education. Everybody seems to want to go there. It's just cheaper, faster, better, scalable, more secure. I mean, it's just to us coming from the tech world it's like a no-brainer. And I think we're starting to see kind of the industry really move there.
So Nitesh, this is for you. So Neeve is a cybersecurity cloud-based solution.
Sure.
So what are some of the business benefits that you see from moving to the cloud, especially OT?
Absolutely. I think Russ started that and said that in order to go to cloud, they had to do a full landscape of existing architectures which are in place. So I'll give an analogy. I mean, when you look at existing systems, they were not designed to talk to each other and not to be in cloud. To break it down simply, it's like every BAS in every building has the same IP address or the same network segment. In order for them to talk to each other, you need to do things on the infrastructure. I mean, the example of iPhone, there was an investment by service providers to bring in the data to the same level of voice infrastructure, and hence iPhone could talk. So that's the same thing where, taking the learnings that Jack and Russ have, creating an infrastructure where you'd never have to worry about cybersecurity, pen testing, compliance, and regulations is what we do. That's number one. And second, creating a fabric where the 6 months of journey becomes you just install this product, it just scans through your network, brings in all the virtualization, connectivity, and secures it so that cloud is equal in performance to on-prem and also works always 24/7 for you. That's what we do.
So what do you see as the biggest misconception about cloud-based solutions being secure from a cybersecurity standpoint?
Yeah. I come from the IT world, spent a lot of time in Cisco. I remember going through the journey of taking telephony to IP telephony, and then speaking to CIOs to tell them, you don't need these data centers or these racks in your closets. And we were told that's never going to happen. And the first thing everybody said was, cloud is not secure. This is secure. It's in our buildings, it's in our premise. That's what is secure. And that's the number one misconception I see. Because when you go to cloud, I think Eddie said it, you now have a community of engineers, technology providers working for you. You hire them right away when you go to cloud. And you get all the benefits which are there. But we got to find the ways to make sure that the real-time controls still happen at where it's needed, while you move the intelligence, analytics, visibility, and also uptime of the business rules out in the cloud. It's kind of like your self-driving cars. They're taking the brakes and visualizing what's around right there, but the intelligence is still coming from the cloud. And that's the model we need to adopt for, and we need to leave that misconception out there that cloud is not secure. Now governments are running there, healthcare is running there. I think Eddie just touched on it. And now you see in industries which had very high compliance regulations to be on-prem are moving to cloud.
So this kind of takes me to Jack. So what type of system architectural changes must be considered when you're talking about moving a certain part of your portfolio or a certain part of your infrastructure to the cloud?
Well, I mean, some of it's pretty easy, right? Most companies, especially with lean IT, they don't want heavy infrastructure anymore. So going to the cloud is pretty simple for that aspect, right? It saves on cost, saves on personnel. When you start talking about, you need to understand the data set that's getting pushed over the cloud, how much data is getting pushed, how to secure that data, and do you have the bandwidth for it, right? So because now that your cloud interface, most people run some sort of SD-WAN with simple DIA internet circuits. So you got to make sure you have enough bandwidth for the traffic that's going over it. You need to connect to that cloud via like a site-to-site VPN. You got to secure that up. Only allow certain IP addresses to talk to the cloud. You do that from a security standpoint. So there's a lot of little check marks you have to go through. And the more data that you're going to use, obviously, the more bandwidth you're going to use, and the more consideration you have to do for your pipes going out to that cloud. So.
Nice. So for you, Mitch, what type of integration issues or challenges did you run into when talking about moving all of those systems and all of those applications to the cloud?
Sure. So there's several things to consider. I think the most important thing, I'm gonna go back to Bedrock here for a second, is the understanding and knowledge of the partnership of the teams that are working for these implementations, right? So having a fantastic MSI to work with, like KODE, Eddie and his team, and Russ and Jack and these guys, they understand data management, data segregation, right? So, inevitably you're gonna have a funnel somewhere when you're exporting data from multiple buildings or even a single building with multiple data entry points and exit points to a cloud. So understanding how to manage those, working through it with the team, using separate UDP ports, whatever the case may be, to really mitigate the traffic, which then mitigates the data loss and maintains data integrity, which I think is the goal of a cloud-based solution. Honestly, that's really the most paramount thing, and from an implementation perspective, and understanding how to optimize the data, to your point, right, at the equipment level, and then giving that data up to and exporting out to where it needs to go, but still maintaining the viability of it is absolutely paramount.
How tough is it to integrate those legacy systems, some of the older protocols?
It's not real bad. I'm a Niagara guy, right? So as long as you can utilize Niagara appropriately and maintain the integrity of the data traffic, it's not too bad at all. I mean, third parties, I'm not sure what's going on there as far as integration, things of that nature, but Tritium makes it fairly easy for us.
Yeah. So one thing you talked about, Mitch, and that was a collaboration amongst the team working with Bedrock. Russ, talk to me a little bit about how your organization is set up from a facilities and IT perspective, because one of the things we talk about quite a bit in an organization that I'm a part of, the Real Estate Cyber Consortium, is IT and facilities coming together and collaborating, right? Building OT governance teams and things like that. So talk to me a little bit about how you guys are set up from just a fundamental standpoint to address something like moving OT to the cloud that makes it easier.
Yeah, so it actually wasn't that hard of a lift for us here at Bedrock, because Jack's got a highly skilled team as well as I do with our control engineers. 3 of them are out there right now, so hello, guys.
You work together, not to cut you off, but
Yep.
do you formally work together?
Yeah,
Okay.
Jack and I are partners in
collaboration,
this. Yeah, we're partners. So Jack and his team, they run our Bedrock BMS network, right? So that's our operational technology network. It runs our security, HVAC, BMS, lighting, anything that we have integrated technology-wise, that's on his network. So that's made my life easy, right? So that's a unique thing that Bedrock has that other companies I've worked for in the past as a contractor don't have. Like, they're sharing networks, right, with tenants and real other people in the building, which makes it a little difficult for integrating BMS sometimes, right? So us having that here made it easy. Our current infrastructure has evolved. So initially, when I came to Bedrock in 2016, the blueprint was every building had JACEs on every level. So for example, this building here has 52 JACEs in it, right? So every quadrant of this building, we have an A, B, and C level. The design of this building back in the day was they put a JACE in every quadrant for every floor. So it's costly, right? When you talk about hardware, you talk about licensing, you talk about the service maintenance agreements, right? That's extremely expensive. We have going to the cloud has allowed us to evolve with technology. So 2 of our newest developments, Book Tower and the Hudson's Tower and Block over here, they have no JACEs in them. We went direct IP controllers with Distech or MSTP, backneck stats or whatever, going through KMC routers, right, up through Jack's network into the cloud on a Niagara-hosted supervisor. So we eliminated, estimated was about $1.3 million in hardware and licensing costs for the Hudson Tower by just going to a Niagara supervisor in the cloud. We are bringing in, just on the base alone, I think we're at 76,000 data points, right? So we do every 15 minutes, we do recordings of our inputs, outputs. We take historicals for every point. So we're transmitting a lot of data to the cloud back and forth. My team has the KODE platform and Niagara infrastructure for support of the infrastructure here at Bedrock. So we're on there working all the time. We have the KODE Labs platform for our property management teams and engineering. So they're constantly on there working on it. And we have not seen any loss of data packets or anything. It's the move to the cloud and going to a cloud-hosted supervisor in Niagara has been a huge success for Bedrock. I mean, it's just financially made sense. With data aggregation, it's made sense. So that's where we're at. We've evolved, and I think in this business, if you don't evolve, you eventually go the way of the dinosaur, you go extinct. So that's why we're constantly evolving our technology.
Absolutely.
Can I hop in? Greg, sorry, can I hop in on that real quick?
No, please.
Yeah, so Russ, you hit something I think is super paramount, not to get overly technical, but the ability to manage the traffic on a floor level back to a router, right? That saves us the needed horsepower within Niagara to do what we need to do at the cloud-based Niagara level, and then with the KODE OS on top of that, that's not draining down the Niagara resources as well. So that's the real value here that from a technical perspective that I'm looking at is data management at the lower level. Do what you got to do at the intermediate cloud level, and then exporting that data out. The KODE OS isn't taxing Niagara with all the visuals, so it can do what it needs to do as well. So it's a robust solution.
So you guys are set up as a digital twin.
Mm-hmm.
So no one's ever touching the building when they log into your system, right?
Correct.
So for Eddie, this is for you. So them being set up, and maybe you two guys chime in also, you guys being set up in the cloud, does that shift the liability and the risk when it comes to cybersecurity from the owner to the solutions provider, or is there a shared risk? How does that work? I'd like you guys to talk about that, because I'm sure some people out there are thinking about this, integrators.
Say from our perspective, right? It and I think multiple people touched on this. It's a partnership, and I think if you approach it from just forget everything else for a second, like if it isn't a transactional relationship and it is a partnership where you can't sit down with in this case with Russ's team, with Jack's team, have a conversation, any contractors that are involved, et cetera, and actually have a meaningful conversation about just what are the goals of Bedrock and how is Bedrock structured and understanding that, and then helping them kind of build from there. Is kind of the way to approach it. But to answer your question more directly, it's absolutely a shared responsibility. We take responsibility for our platform, everything that hits our platform, and anybody that can access Bedrock, anything through our platform. But that doesn't remove the responsibility of Russ and Jack and team to do all the things they need to do on site at infrastructure level, whether that is on how you set up your network or anything else that's riding on the network that has nothing to do with with code in that, and from that perspective, right?
Yeah, Greg, I'll add on to that too.
No,
so,
please.
and Jack is big on this, and he's actually smacked my hand once in a while. So, if we have an unmanaged switch anywhere in our system, right, that we put into a BAS panel for access for my team or contractors, right, it's unmanaged, they can just log in if we don't know they're in the building, and they can get access. We have lock it down through the Jace with passwords, and they still have access. And we've actually had a contractor in this building do that a few years ago. So we've gone through and gotten rid of all unmanaged switches, and now everything's managed throughout our portfolio. But yeah, if there's a, like what Eddie said, if there is a break anywhere in this partnership, like if Jack cybersecurity fails, or our Tritium cybersecurity fails, or Google Cloud fails us, or KODE has an attack, because KODE is a read-write capability to our Niagara infrastructure, right? So if someone was to hack into KODE, they could take buildings offline, shut them down. You just no telling. So it is a shared partnership on security, and that's why you have NDAs in place, and you make sure that everybody's got their bases covered.
Nice.
Yeah, and I'll add to that as well.
No, please.
So if Russ's network gets compromised and someone's able to VLAN hop over into our physical security VLAN or anything else that we have going on, that's a huge risk and liability for Bedrock. It's reputational. It's things go down. It's a huge problem. So that's why we're really tight on security. That's why if I'm on a construction call and I hear someone, we got to install this managed switch, I unmute that and say, nope, no one's installing switches unless my team's involved. There will be no managed switches, and it's going to be this cost for that switch, because we will not have managed switches in the network. Last thing you need is a loop, and then it taking down a whole segment of your network, and it's hard to find once you have a loop in your network. So we're pretty strict on that for that reason. It's not just to keep BMS up and running, which is important, but it's also the rest of the network that I have to worry about and make sure that nothing gets compromised. So
I think one last thing I'll add to that.
No, please.
Being able to do this without adding levels of bureaucracy is, I think, where Bedrock really shines. And not to speak for Bedrock, although I am a former Bedrocker, back in the day. But I think like what we see from a code perspective is that it's so easy to get caught up in this whole like, let's architect the world and do this and da-da-da and do this for 17 years. Like being able to do it in a way where like this stuff isn't rocket science. Like it has been done literally for ages. Like separate networks, having things on a network, keeping them secure, having, switches and firewall. Like this isn't rocket science. There's a team that's dedicated to it. They understand the value that everything Russ is doing with his team, and they act fast. And I can't stress that enough, is when a request comes in, you're not waiting for 17 years for Jack to put you through 75,000 questionnaires. Like there's a model, there's a process, it goes fast, it is secure, it checks all the boxes. And I think we find that extremely valuable.
Yeah, the need for collaboration and trust in that relationship, right?
Yep.
So how do you guys handle like latency and the need to grab real-time data when it comes to moving all your things to the cloud now?
I'll hop on that one first if I can.
No, please.
Contractors, you have to tune networks. You have to do our due diligence from a contractor perspective. If you're not tuning networks and you're not providing quick update times through the network to the cloud to the platforms, you're doing a disservice to the platforms and the customer. The buck stops with us and it starts with us, right? So without the contractors putting in networks and things that are going to update in appropriate manners, everything else kind of fails downline. And everybody's going to start looking at the cloud and the network infrastructure and the switches and the traffic management and all that stuff. But really, it's as simple as you put in devices, set appropriate tuning policies, tune them appropriately. That's per brand, right? That's not across the board. All brands are treated differently. Do the right thing at the ground level to set up the remainder of the team for success.
And Mitch, is that something that's like a schedule of maintenance that you provided in a scope to the owner?
No, it's something we do. It's something we do as a manner of course, right? So, obviously Bedrock is a big partner of ours, and we're constantly going in and tuning networks and backnet networks and making sure that we're getting the efficiency out of the networks that we need, right? And that's where the infrastructure and the ability to work within this group of team, right, is paramount, because if we're seeing lag in network, where's the bottleneck? Identifying the bottleneck, because everybody understands their little portion of the pie. It's super easy to figure out, whether it's collaborating with Jack's team, shout out Tavis at KODE Labs, he's great to work with, or is it simply, us going into a router, figuring out the network jam in a router and then tuning accordingly, right? It has to happen at the controller in router level.
Yeah. So Russ, you talked about licensing earlier, right? So what is the total cost, or not the total cost, but how does that affect the total cost for you guys running your organization when it came to you moving all of your OT to the cloud and avoiding licensing fees and things like that?
Yes.
Yeah, dive into that a little bit for me.
Okay.
Because I know you touched it before.
I'll give you on average what the infrastructure this building costs. So 52 Jaces, when you add in the control panel, you have to put the Jace in, the physical hardware, the integration costs from the integrator to build out the Jace station and all that, the platform to bring in the control system, right? And then you have your SMA with Tritium, which can be 1 to 5 years, and you have to renew those. And as we all know, anyone who's dealt with Niagara, every week or every other week, they have an update, a revision, right? So you're constantly having to update the Jace software. So it becomes a process. Like my team right now is we have a solid infrastructure of Jaces that we originally started, a lot of them 3.8. We've moved to N4 Jace 8000s. Now we're going to 9000s. We've had to constantly update, because we don't just sit back and let something run on our network. So when there's new revisions that come out, we upgrade. So we're upgrading the Jaces to the newest revision of software currently. So when you add all that into the mix, per Jace with the licensing on it, we're probably $10,000+ per Jace. So in this building here, you're probably a little over $750,000 in Jaces. So when we decided to go with the Book Tower and Hudson's with Niagara hosted supervisors, the cost was 90% cheaper than doing the physical infrastructure of Jaces, right? And we worked with Vicon, Tritium, George Keller, and Jamie Johnson, those guys on that. So it wasn't like we tried to short circuit their process, right? We actually worked with them to develop how we can make this work, going BACnet IP with controllers we could, and going BACnet MSTP through routers where we needed to. So we worked with Tritium to design and build out these systems. We put them online, and the savings is there. Instead of having to my team having to go through, because we've been spending 3 months, guys, a little longer, upgrading all these JACEs right now, about 3 months. So going through the physical update of the revisions of software, right? We're probably 3 months into that. And then when we do those revisions, that's when I find out, like, hey, your SMA is expired. So to update this JACE, you got to purchase this. So these are where all these hidden costs come, right? And you try to pre-plan your budget every year, and it would take a lot for our team to go through every single JACE and decide what our budget is. So I throw blanket numbers on there. We hit it, but it's costly. So by doing one supervisor for one building, that's one system we have to upgrade. That's one SMA we have to have. Supervisors aren't cheap, but in the long run, in my opinion, it's our approach. That's what we're doing from now on at Bedrock.
So was this something that you guys had to develop an extensive business case to submit to someone in your organization to move forward with this stuff, or did you have the dollars, or were you taking dollars from your operational budget, moving them to a capital site? Like, how did that look?
Yeah, so anytime, my job here and Jack's job is not only do we oversee operational technology, keep our buildings online and keep our tenants doing the Bedrock experience. What that is, a Class A real estate, right? So we want everybody to have that Class A experience. Our jobs are also to be conscious of our budgets, reduce net operating income anywhere we can. So whenever I can run up to leadership and say, hey, I can save you $1 million, I look like a hero. So yes, that's how we do it. We just find savings, we prove the savings, we prove the return on investment, we prove that it's going to function and operate. And Book Tower was our first one. Once we had the realization that this is amazing, it's working. And I'm going to give kudos to Mitch and his team on that. So there was a lot, like he said, there were a lot of tuning policies we did because it was our first approach at BACnet IP and MSTP through routers on a system going to a cloud with supervisor. So Mitch and his team, they were diligent to tune the communication buses and make sure that everything we're doing, because like I said, we aggregate all of our historical data to the cloud. We save every point everywhere we have to because we're a real estate company, and we have to be able to prove to a tenant, prove or disprove if the service calls are put in are accurate, right? Because tenants tend to, when they're not happy with the comfort or the environmental comfort of their area, they'll want to hold back on rent, right? So we have to prove through historical data that yes, you were correct at this, this month you did not have the environmental conditions we guarantee to provide you. So yeah, we'll give you a cut in your rent. So that's why we do what we do here. And again, Mitch's team was great on that one. KODE seamlessly on that, but that KODE software it overlays on anything, right? So these guys here, it's a no-brainer for me. They just land on everything and it works. We went, so our history of our systems, 3.8s to the JACE 8000, to the JACE 9000, the supervisor, anywhere have we had an issue with any of those devices going to the cloud. We've had no issues with any of that stuff connecting with KODE. We've had no issues with our operations. It's all worked out. And I think we have 2 3.8 JACEs left, and they're about to get thrown out the door.
So I want to stay on the financial side, excuse me, for a minute. So let's go down to Nitesh.
Sure.
So what does the ROI look like? Just from a 30,000-foot view, right? Sure. What does the ROI look like moving from the traditional on-prem type of deployment to the cloud?
Sure. I think to Russ's point, the ROI for any technology when you take it from on-prem to cloud, the ROI is anywhere from 6 months to 18 months as a journey. That's it. And you can take any stack, where you overlay the layers that Mitch said. You got to start with, okay, what are the integration points for this new stack to go integrate? That's what Russ, alluded to that. You look at your existing systems, you look at those integration points, and then you start to move things one at a time to the cloud, and that scale will show up in financial metrics anywhere from 6 to 18 months. I'll give another example of customers of ours where they just have a team of 2 IT professionals managing their entire portfolio of 154 buildings. That ROI, it took them 18 months to get there, but it's a no-brainer now for them because that cost is getting reinvested into tools and technologies to serve the tenants and also the investors better for those buildings and for those owners. And once you go to that model, I think Jack said that everyone wants a lean IT team, but they want the access to the innovation and also to the agility to stay ahead of the curve. Because the world around us is changing at a rapid pace that if you don't put those infrastructure elements in place, you'll not catch up. And then the expectation will not be met. And then you're going to have tough conversations with those enterprises that you are creating the assets for. And that's what the ROI play comes into play. There's going to be financial, and then there is going to be experiential that'll need to play together to stay ahead of the curve.
Absolutely. So I want to bring this to Eddie because it kind of talks about, I want to ask you a question. How do you deal with, or what is your story, your elevator pitch when it comes to talking to facilities managers, other OT professionals as to why it's more important to push all of your OT to the cloud? Like what is your main point, that your main sticking point that you talk to them about? and get that skepticism to, move over to the left.
I feel like there's a bunch of angles to attack it, but for us, it's the simplest is you're living in a siloed world where you have a large portfolio, a bunch of different systems. Some are somewhat normalized on a Niagara to the points that were made earlier. A lot are not, as we see in a lot of different portfolios. So it's a matter of get the entirety of your systems normalized on one platform, and we're not just talking BAS anymore. Like there's a ton of other systems within a portfolio that are equally as important as just the core BMS. Yes, we understand the importance of BMS. It's the quote unquote the engine of the building, right? But combined with the rest of the data set in a portfolio, and then also using the entire data stack to actually optimize the operations of a building, right? So if you're just looking in a siloed world of BMS or really any other system, it doesn't work. For us, it's the ability to basically scale, add the entire data stack on one platform, and then use the entirety of the data that's available within a portfolio to truly optimize the entire portfolio, not siloed buildings, not siloed systems. It's one place, having your entire data normalized, and then being able to use, look, now we're talking about, there's a whole conversation about AI and ML, et cetera, right? That everybody talks about, but really the only AI ML you see in real estate is like if you're working in accounting or leases. Like you're not seeing AI ML anywhere else. Like just starting to see it now. And the only way you're going to see it is if you have a platform that has the entire history of your data that you can now take advantage of and drive. AI doesn't work without data, period, full stop.
Yeah. Nitesh, you'd like to add something to that, little color?
Absolutely. I think to Eddie's point, I just tell my team also, please don't sell the cloud. Nobody buys the buzzwords. You got to just show them the results and always start with, do you have any problem today in your operations or in your day-to-day management or compliance? If they say none, you say, great, you are living in a great world, and then you leave. But more often than not, they'll come back with, yeah, I wish if I could. And that's what you need to start with. And you need to say, okay, well, maybe we have a technology with our partners and ourselves where we can come and give it a shot. So I tell them, start small, take a set of problems, show results. Once you show results, then they will more often than not come back on table with you, open up and say, these are the 7 other things that we want to tackle. Will the move to cloud help? And you got to be very pragmatic and empathetic to their needs, and then work with them hand in hand to get there. So the pitch has to be very simple. Yes, cloud has worked everywhere else. It may or may not work for you. I don't know. But let's start working together to see if there is a path there. And then to Eddie's point, without getting to cloud, without that data, the future innovation isn't happening. Do you want to stay in the current phase as is? Because there's a saying, what got you here today will not get you to tomorrow. If you're moving forward, there are things which are needed to change with mindset, with systems, and then embrace that innovation. It's going to free us all up to do better things. So that's how we start, and that's how we engage with our customers.
Yeah, thank you. So Russ, let's talk a little bit about the workforce scale. Right? Your staffing. So how important is it for you to have diversity? And when I say diversity, I'm speaking from a skill standpoint. Diversity in your staff when it comes to that migration. How important is it, and what type of skill sets do you look for? Because I know you spoke on your staff, who seems to be sitting here in the audience a little bit. How important is that, and what does that look like?
It's very important. So when I came over here, I used to work for Jeff over at WJ O'Neill. So I was one of his control engineers out in the field. We did a lot of work for Bedrock during the day, and it was just a opportunity for me to come over here and take a different journey on my my career, right? To do something different, right? To run the smart building strategy at Bedrock. So I took that, and when I came over here, I had a pretty, I'd say, rookie team. We had one guy who was an IT tech who didn't know anything about control systems integration. We brought him up to speed real quick. He learned the Niagara side of it fast. And him being on the IT side, that was a plus for me, right? So he easily navigated to that side of the business, like BACnet IP, things like that. It's like no brainer from Jace's. He could work on those right out of the gate. So that was that. And then, I've acquired a couple former coworkers that were with me at one point, and they're fully seasoned control engineers. The three I have out here now, Jerry was an HVAC. I'd say journeyman HVAC service technician. So within a year and a half, we brought him from that point to where he's a full-fledged integrated control engineer on my team. He can do pretty much anything I need him to do. Brian Tabaka is the newest on my team. We brought him in from our field services team here at Bedrock. He had no experience in, per se, HVAC or controls, but he had experience in controls for sprinkler systems, right? So if you can wire an alarm system, if you can wire a sprinkler system, we can train you on controls. Amanda, who's my newest hire, she's relatively new, but she's, tech savvy, this young generation. Are you a millennial, or what are you? You don't identify?
She said those kids.
I don't know how to say it. She impresses me daily. She came into this with just very limited experience. She had about a year in at a control contractor doing design, right? Doing their MEPs and reviewing drawings and setting those up for the company. We brought her in, and she's become very proficient with Niagara and other control systems. So due to the lack of available qualified control engineers in this market here, I've had to think out of the box, and I couldn't just set myself and say, I need a control engineer, I need someone from the union that's been doing this in Detroit forever. I never want to steal from the contractors that I use to support Bedrock, right? So that's not something I do. I don't go look for like Mitch's team or Jeff's team. I'm not going to go steal guys from their team. I just wouldn't do that.
There goes my retirement plan.
Yeah. So I have to be strategic, right? So I've had to think out of the box and go find these people. And it's just, Greg, I don't know how to say it. You just have a gut instinct with you. You just can tell if someone's going to have what it takes to do it or not. And so far I've been, I say, lucky. I've hit home runs on all of them so far. But yeah, thinking out of the box has been huge. So that's my side of the team. We're fully developed now and running forward. Our engineering team, who are very competent at what they do, right? They do more of the in-house maintenance work at Bedrock. Mm-hmm. They don't touch the Niagara side, right? That's just like the fear. We call that the old war. What Rick Scrow say? Fear of the black box, right? You don't know the control system, you stay away from it. But with the KODE Labs platform, they've become proficient enough to where they can go out on the job site through their cell phones, and they can manually override dampers or turn systems online for testing and maintenance, things like that. They can unoccupy air handlers when they're doing belt changes, filter changes, and then lock them down. So they can actually go through and shut the air handler down the proper way through the control logic, instead of just slamming a disconnect and causing us chaos with alarms and all this stuff, right? So that has helped us, and those are guys that are very good at the mechanical side, but when it comes to that control side, it wasn't even a challenge. They've all picked it up rather quickly. Our operations team, property management, we've given them access to the BMS platform, the KODE platform, and they use it to, some, not all, they'll use it to quantify if a tenant, service request is validated, right? Because they can look you right there and say, if a tenant says, hey, I'm at 78 degrees in my space, they can go to the platform and look and say, no, you're not, but we're going to roll engineering just to confirm, take a walk in the area. So they at least have, engineering will have like a preview of what they're getting ready to walk into, right? Mm-hmm. So for us, having these operational technologies has made our facilities more streamlined, more efficient. I wouldn't say we reduce staffing, but I just, for example, I have a team of 6 control engineers, and we oversee 70 buildings now between Detroit and Cleveland. We come into the office Monday through Friday because we're required to, but I'm being honest with you, my team and I can work remote every day, support this entire infrastructure from our homes, from our laptops at home or whatever, and just come down for the occasional service call. We have to have hands on site. But part of Bedrock's policy that they like is, right, we have tenants in the building, so they want to see our presence here. So we're on site, even though we could fully work remotely. We set this up for that intention. We give access to our control contractors for remote access. So prior to me being here, previous generations of leadership didn't like that, right? They didn't like giving outside contractors remote access into systems. They wanted to come downtown. I'm different that way. I feel like if we have it locked down, secured, if I can have Mitch or Jeff or whoever it is, their team, remote access, and they can do finalizing things, commissioning, tuning, whatever, remote, as long as they're not taking buildings offline. I allow that, right? We give them a lockdown access with them, so we know what they've been doing, so we can track them, audit what they're doing. So yeah, all of this stuff has streamlined our processes. It's made us more efficient. It's made our operations pretty much 100% stable. So.
Nice. And now I know, Eddie, you mentioned AI. Nitesh, I'd like you to talk about this a little bit.
Sure.
Where do you see AI and machine learning evolving over the next 3 to 5 years within cloud-based environments?
Sure. I would say, Greg, Eddie said that we are already seeing, AI make an impact. I'll just start with my organization. Just in engineering, I think Eddie and Edward will understand this. As I said, there's never enough budget in a startup, and then there is never enough people to get things done. And the expectation from the customers is to evolve fast, give them the features as of yesterday. AI is that tool that brings that agility. So much so that over the last 2 releases, we started off just embracing AI as an assistant for our entire engineering team. And as of last release, we are coming to about 50% of the code being written by AI. It has hugely helped me as a leader to look at innovation ahead, react fast, deliver things and services to my customers better. So that's just internal. But now coming very specific to BAS and in the cloud, we just took the innovation that's going on when OpenAI released their operator. In our product, we give access, which is agentless on a browser. We were able to embrace that and automate tasks which on a day-to-day basis operations folks need to do. And it freed them up, and some of our customers tried it, and suddenly the engineers and the small team was able to focus on key things that they needed to do and not worry about those every 8 a.m. So starting just with that today, to a point where, I think Russ just said that, an average user being able to communicate to a BAS is going to be a future, which is like, hey, what's the temperature here in this conference room right now? If you were to translate that into an engineering term, okay, this is the VAV zone, that's the JS, I need to go there, look at that temp, and then report back. That AI should be able to do. But it would require all of us together as an industry to give the right training, the guardrails, and security infrastructure for AI to help us, innovate and stay ahead. So that's where, things are. The other thing here, I'll say that, yes, don't touch the black box. It's the same sayings in the financials and also in the healthcare systems. But we are seeing advances in the healthcare with AI and also in finances. Eddie said that today, leasing and, rents and others, including some of the, calculations and predictions on who's going to come, who's not going to renovate, what should be there. AI is already there. It's just a matter of time. AI will be core into operations in us as product providers. I'm pretty sure Eddie, myself, and all, we will start to embrace AI where it will be part of our core platforms. That's the only way it's going to, help us to scale and innovate. And that's how I see it.
Yeah. Eddie, do you see that there's a benefit in customers having their systems in the cloud when they're deploying AI and thinking about deploying AI?
I mean, I generally don't know how you do it otherwise. I mean, I know we talk about,
Right. Yeah.
AI on at the edge and all these other things, but if we're talking at scale, large portfolios, multiple systems, historical data, et cetera, it needs to be normalized. It needs, it has to be in the cloud where you're not worried again about racking and stacking every time you need to add more compute, et cetera. So I think one is, of course, having a good network, as was mentioned before, making sure that's secure. That goes without saying. That's like having the keys to the building, right? But once that's in place, which I think a lot of the larger, real estate organizations will usually have, teams dedicated to it, et cetera, that have that in place. Number two, from my perspective, and this isn't a code pitch, this is just really a real estate thing from my perspective.
Give it to us.
Is
Give it to us.
make sure you make sure you know the entire data stack. And I can't stress that enough. Like, it's not just your BMS. It's not just your BMS. It's not just your BMS. Your BMS is core. Yes, that's the engine. But make sure you have something you're landing on that has your entire stack. And you hear things like data lakes and data hubs and and then it goes on, and you can make it as complex as you want. But in its most simple way is like, make sure you have access to all of it. Make sure it's going someplace where it's normalized. That then allows you or somebody that comes after you, if you care about the company or the organization you're with, to be able to take advantage of whatever innovative thing is going to be launched next by whoever is providing the next product, to Nitesh's point. And to me, like the conversation of cloud, I'm glad it's becoming more and more relevant, but I'm hoping it becomes irrelevant here in the next 12 months, because it's just the way of the world.
Absolutely. So let's stay with Bedrock, and I want all four of you guys to chime in on this. So when you look back, say 5 years from now, or 5 years from your deployment, when did you guys first move to the cloud?
2022.
2022. Okay, so when we hit the 5-year mark, what kind of lessons learned, things we got right, things we got wrong, will you guys reflect on without giving too much information?
Yeah,
I think we're all friends in here.
Yeah, I would say the way we did it, because KODE had the experience of moving other customers to the cloud. Jack and his team and my team and I and our leadership, we didn't just jump both feet in the water. When I say it took us 6 months, that was planning and preparing for the lifts, and we did it in stages, right? And when we made the final lift and shift, that's what we call it. Remember that, Jack?
Yep.
It was like, today is the day. This is happening at this time. All
water.
hell's going to break loose or it's going to work, okay? We had everything we needed in place, and we moved it over seamlessly. Jack has a guy on his team, John George, who was instrumental working with KODE's developers over in Kosovo, because there was a lot of, so that's the other thing too. So there's a big, 12-hour time, 6-hour, time difference. So we're doing it here real time in Michigan, and they're already at the end of their day in Kosovo, but they all hung in with us, and we were communicating, from Europe to America, and we're making this lift and shift go between his team, my team, their presence in Detroit and their presence in Kosovo. We made that shift, and we had we didn't have any issues that I recall, Jack. Do you recall any issues?
It was pretty smooth. I mean, there was some, whenever you interface with
I'm
someone
still
else's,
working here, so it worked.
from a network perspective, whenever you integrate into someone else's cloud environment, there's always difficulties.
Yeah.
So while it went really well, it could have been quicker.
Yeah.
And that's kind of my lessons learned on that is it could have been quicker. We could have shored up the network piece a little bit more.
Yeah.
We could have understood, because you're doing a site to site, you have your router, they have their router, understand the two routers, how they're going to communicate with each other. I think that kind of lessons learned I take back from my team of, we could have shored that up a little bit better. We could have been a little bit quicker on that. So.
How about you, Mitch?
I think that the biggest thing was having the team in place and Bedrock doing the due diligence to make it successful, right? So, when Conti did the Book Tower project that Russ has referenced a few times, and when he said, "Hey, we're not putting any Jaces in," it's like, what? That's what Bedrock does, right? Jace every floor, every quadrant, every floor, and being able to sit down and have very meaningful, intelligent conversations with Bedrock, Russ, his team, the KODE guys, and say, okay, how are we going to pull together a 37-story building, no Jaces, one cloud instance, and make everything work properly from a data management level all the way through the actual controls through et cetera, right? What you guys did right and not a lot of and this is by no means a shade to anybody else, but a lot of other big entities out there don't do right is they don't have Russ's team, they don't have Jack's team. They're certainly not talking together. And if they do, it's through a third party that doesn't have skin in the game, right? So the core infrastructure and planning is what made this thing successful. It wasn't Conti doing great. No offense to KODE, but they were a big part of it. But it was really Bedrock putting everything in that needed to be there to make it a successful and a good transition.
Yeah, Edric?
It's Eddie. That's right.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Hey, I do that all the time too. It's all right.
I think I do it once every time I see you.
That's fine.
By me.
Add a little color to that, for me, please.
Well, I honestly think that's really covered it super well. Look, we're only as successful as the people we work with. The Bedrock's case, they set us up for success. They're a partner. I mean, I don't think Mitch, ourselves, anybody else that works with Bedrock ever feels like it's a transactional relationship. It's genuinely not. You sit, you talk the good through the bad, you learn, you move on. And they also, I think they do a really good job of bringing all of us together that work for Bedrock. We work, in Mitch's case, I mean, we work with you in another place, another guy who's, I won't mention his name, maybe I should. People will go around him, but Paul at Forlick, we work there as well, right? So, but it's genuinely being lucky to work with a client that has the team and the people and the foresight to go, yeah, you know what, we're going to go and we're going to try this thing. Let's just make sure that we're doing the planning right. Let's make sure we put the right people in place, and let's make sure that the people that are doing this work for us are like aligned, so it doesn't turn into this like finger pointing thing. Because when things go wrong, it isn't a Mitch thing, it isn't a KODE thing, it isn't a Conti thing. It's generally we all went wrong, and we all just need to come back together for the client. Because if Jack and Russ are not happy, then we got. I'm not sitting up here and we don't have
100%.
Right.
And Greg, to close this out with what
please do.
we did on this, at Bedrock, and Jack can attest this, failure is not an option.
Yep.
So we couldn't just wing it and pretend like we've done it before. We had to put our diligence in. If it failed, Jack and I wouldn't be here. So we had to make sure that we covered every aspect of it. So we had a lot of meetings behind the scenes, just making sure we're covering every part of this project, that it went across seamlessly and we didn't lose connectivity to our buildings, because our owner doesn't accept failure like that, right? So it's stressful sometimes, but we work through it.
Outstanding. So we've got a few minutes left. I wanted to leave a couple minutes for questions. We've got one back there. Do we have a hot mic that we can give him, please?
Thank you. So I got to really lay this question out to get the meat out of it. So if BAS in the cloud is inevitable, let's say that means that we plan for 80 to 95% of all BAS systems to be in the cloud at some point. Is that fair? So if that's inevitable, and I want everyone in the room to think about this. If you have your personal checking accounts, your pensions accounts, your credit card accounts, all playing in the same cloud space is BAS. And so now here's the fundamentals of my question. If this is inevitable, is government cloud also inevitable? And if it's not, do you expect the government cloud and the consumer cloud to play in the same space at some point? Or do you think that they'll always be separate? And if separate, which do you think is going to end up developing faster?
I want to see who's going to take this one.
I'll take that one. So I have prior experience working with GSA, and they are actually a tenant here at Bedrock. So Jeff and I worked for GSA for years at McNamara Federal Building. They were very locked down. They wanted everything just going to Lansing servers. No one had connection into it, anything like that. They were resistant to JACEs or anything like that. They have since made that change, but they're lagging, I would say, the rest of the industry by probably 10 years. So I don't know. I would say, in my opinion, no, the government will never share a cloud server with normal Americans or normal businesses. I don't think that'll ever happen. I think they'll keep their stuff segmented. But I do see that the government's going to be, everyone's going to be on the cloud. It's just the way it's going. Servers are archaic, like server rooms for all this stuff, it's archaic. Everybody's going to go to the cloud. I would assume our government will be there in 10 years, probably fully on the cloud. That's just my opinion, where I see things going.
I have a quick follow-up on that. What's the cloud to you? What do you mean when you say cloud?
Cloud is off-premise, basically.
Yep. So yeah, as far as intermingling between verticals, I agree with Russ. That's never going to happen. But as far as, individual verticals having their own cloud style setup, I think is the larger thing we need to discuss here, because, going to the cloud isn't going necessarily always to Azure or Amazon or Google, right? A cloud is spooling up a cloud, right, Mike? And then segmenting the data to that. So I think that's the biggest thing I want to make sure we talk about with that.
I'll just add. I mean,
Yeah, please.
Obviously, public information. We got a big GSA contract recently. We are a cloud-based platform, and I usually agree with Russ on most things. I think the government is going to the cloud faster than most real estate companies, and I think you'll see the government in the cloud probably in the next 24 months with regard to their real estate.
I mean, they have to, right? Scalability, bottom line.
Doesn't work any other way.
Agreed.
So we've got one more minute for one more question. You're going to speak later, so. Go right ahead.
My question may depend on where you put it. You mentioned several options where you may put your cloud platforms, but at the end of the day, cloud is still on a server somewhere. And a lot of the cost models, if you're going to Amazon, you're paying for data, you're paying for I/O, you're paying for memory, you're paying for compute cycles.
Uptime.
You've done that cost analysis, like as you're paying for all those things, but you're not paying for a data center. How does that work out?
Drastic. Drastic.
45% was our return on investment by going off-prem from on-prem, right? So that's what we, our realized savings was 45%. Bedrock is also everything was hosted on our on-prem servers. Jack and his team have been moving, everything's going to the cloud at Bedrock. We have Azure, we're doing everything. My instance, we've decided it's a decision leadership-wise at Bedrock to keep the BMS off of the corporate cloud. So we have our GCP instance for the BMS, and Jack and his team are moving everything to Azure.
Yeah, plus when you go to cloud infrastructure, you get that redundancy, right? You're on a cluster somewhere, they can move your cluster if there are issues. So you get that built-in redundancy that normally you would have to pay for. So now you're duplicating your data center space, which is going to cost even more money. I mean, when we were in a data center and then duplicate that backups to another one, the cost of that was ridiculous. So when Russ came and said, hey, we want to go to cloud, I'm like, yeah, let's look at the cost of the contracts, but I think that's a great idea because data center wise, we were paying so much for that. So
I think on the on-prem, when you do the sizing, you always design for 80% CPU, 60% memory, and 70% data utilization. You're leaving that capacity for these spikes that happen. But when you move to a cloud, you're on a bigger farm where you're pulling these resources with the right structures in place, and hence day zero you will see the benefits, including those IOPS. And that's where I think Mitch said that you have to be careful about what data leaves when and transacts there. And the ingress and egress of data center versus cloud, you just plan for it. And then once you do that, well, you will see the return right away.
Thank you, Nitesh.
Right.
Last question. We're about to start eating into lunchtime.
So I just wanted to ask, I guess, Russ, you get to sleep at night?
What's that?
You get to sleep at night?
Yeah.
Your operations are running smoothly, everything's going well, you actually get to sleep.
My team, they're the ones that are on 24/7 calling out.
Congratulations, fantastic.
Panelists, a round of applause. Really appreciate you guys participating. Hopefully everyone had a few takeaways, and we'll get this next session started here soon.